We experience life through the medium of time. Each new moment brings with it new opportunities as we ascend through the journey of time. And amidst the constantly moving waves of time, the Chagim, the holidays, are specific points imbued with unique energy. Each holiday presents us with the opportunity to tap into and experience the theme inherent at that point in time. And if Shavuos is the time of Kabbalas Torah, receiving the Torah, then to truly understand what we're trying to experience on Shavuos, we have to first understand what Torah is. And while scholars may refer to it as a history book, and others think of it as a book of law or a source of Jewish wisdom, there's something so much deeper at hand, because these approaches only scratch the surface of Torah's true nature. To truly understand the importance of Kabbalas Torah, we therefore have to really understand Torah's true depth. Torah is not simply a guide to living a life of truth within this world. It's the very blueprint and DNA of the world itself. In other words, our physical world is a projection and emanation of the deep spiritual reality described in the Torah. And this is the meaning behind the famous midrash, Istakel ba'oraisa ubara alma. Hashem looked into the Torah and used it to create the physical world. Torah is the spiritual root of existence. The physical world is its expression. And to illustrate this concept, imagine a projector. The image that you see on the screen emanates from the film in the projector, so that everything you see on the screen is simply an expression of what's contained within the film. And so too, every single thing that we see and experience in the physical world stems from the spiritual root, the transcendent dimension of Torah. Thus, the world in which we live is an avenue to the spiritual. We can access the spiritual transcendent world through the physical world because the two are intimately, intrinsically connected. And to relate to this concept, just think of the way in which other human beings experience and understand you. All they can see of you is your physical body. They can't see your thoughts, your consciousness, your emotions, your soul. All they can see are your actions, words, facial expressions, and body language, the ways in which you express yourself within the world. They can't see your inner world, but they can access it through the outer expressions that you project. And the same is true regarding human beings trying to experience Hashem and the spiritual. We can't see the spiritual. We can't see that which is ethereal and transcendent, only that which is physical. However, we can use the physical to access the spiritual root. We can study the Torah's expression in this world to understand its spiritual root. And to more fully grasp the depth of this concept, we have to first understand the nature and purpose of a mashal. A mashal is an analogy, an example one gives in order to explain something abstract and conceptual to one who doesn't yet understand it. So if a teacher wants to share a deep principle with his or her students, they might share a story or analogy that depicts the idea through a more relatable medium. And while the mashal doesn't fully convey the idea itself, it does lead the listener towards it, aiding him or her in the process of understanding. Deep ideas can't be taught, as they're beyond words. They can only be hinted to and talked about. The job of the teacher is to guide the student towards the idea until the idea falls into the student's mind with clear understanding. A mashal serves as a guiding force in this process, leading the student towards an understanding of that which cannot be put into words. And this process itself can be understood through a mashal. You can't teach someone how to ride a bike. You can only help them holding on while they practice and perhaps showing them an example of how it's done. Ultimately, though, you have to let go, and the student has to learn how to ride it independently on their own. Once you learn how to ride a bike, though, it's hard to imagine not being able to ride one. And we often can't understand what took us so long to learn. And yet, despite the fact that we now know how to ride a bike, we will not be able to explain how to ride a bike to someone else. It's simply beyond words. A mashal is the only tool a teacher can use to teach spiritual truths. The learning and understanding has to be done within the inner mind of the student. And if this is true, how are we able to understand the spiritual world? We can't see, touch, or feel the spiritual world, so how are we supposed to relate to it? And if all learning occurs through the use of analogy, then what mashal did Hashem give us to enable us to relate to and understand spiritual truths? Well, the ultimate mashal is the world itself. It's here to guide us towards a deeper spiritual truth. Everything in this world is a mashal, a tool guiding us towards a deeper reality. Every physical object, every emotional phenomenon, every experience in this world is part of a larger mashal leading us towards the ultimate root of all existence, Hashem. And this idea is expressed powerfully in the use of anthropomorphism in the Torah, which is the attribution of human characteristics to Hashem. One of the fundamental principles of Judaism is that Hashem has no physical form whatsoever. This is one of the Rambam's 13 Ikari Emunah, his 13 principles of faith. And yet the Torah is replete with anthropomorphic descriptions of Hashem, describing Hashem's physical figure, talking about his finger, his hand. So how are we supposed to make sense of this? So one approach to this problem is that Dibra Torah Kalashon Bnei Adam, that the Torah speaks in the language of people. In other words, in order for people to be able to understand and relate to an infinite God who is beyond physical form, the Torah speaks in a language that human beings can relate to. And this is problematic though, because the Torah is the blueprint of reality. It's the ultimate source of truth. Every single word in the Torah is intrinsically and fundamentally true. And as such, when Torah describes the hand of Hashem, Hashem must actually have a hand. And therefore we face a real dilemma. If Hashem has no physical form whatsoever, then how can the Torah describe Hashem as having a hand? The Nefesh HaChaim, Ramchal, and many others therefore give a deeper approach to this topic, which reveals a powerful principle. We think of our hand as the real hand, assuming that Hashem's hand is being compared to our hand. But what if Hashem's hand is the real hand? And our physical hand is just a mashal for the spiritual paradigm of handness. In other words, everything in the physical world, including our physical bodies, is a limited physical expression of the spiritual truth, the root and source of reality. Our goal in this world is to use the physical as a mashal, as a tool to learn the true nature of reality. And with the Torah as our guide and teacher, we can navigate the physical and understand how to trace ourselves back to our ultimate source, Hashem. And this is our goal on Shavuos. Because on Shavuos, there's a custom to stand during the Torah reading. And Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik explains that we stand during the Torah reading on this day because we're recreating the experience of Matan Torah, when the Jewish people stood around Har Sinai to receive the Torah. On Shavuos, we don't simply remember what once occurred. We re-experience the power of Kabbalas Torah, of receiving and accepting the Torah. We don't simply repeat the process. Rather, we re-accept the Torah each year on an entirely new level, as fundamentally higher beings growing through each revelation of Torah. Kabbalas Torah this year is at the same point along the circle of time as last year, but one rung higher along the spiral of time. We are truly receiving the Torah anew, in a new dimension of time and spiritual energy. And Hashem gave us this gift of Torah. He gave us the Torah in order to guide us on our spiritual journey in this world. Shavuos is therefore not a call to be transcendent angelic beings, lofty and perfect, beyond the struggle intrinsic to the human condition. This is not permission to deny our humanity and restrict our sense of self. This is a calling to be human, to be the ultimate human, to bring transcendence and spirituality into this world. We don't aim to escape this world, we aim to transform it. Kedusha is not transcendence or escapism, it's marrying transcendence with the immanent. And this is what the Torah teaches us, how to uplift our physical experience and connect it to the spiritual. And when implemented correctly, Torah enables us to uplift every aspect of our worldly experience to something higher, holier, and more meaningful. And this is our mission. Our mission is to make this Shavuos the next step in our evolutionary spiral through time. We must not only re-accept what we've already accepted, we have to take it to the next level, the next rung of the ladder. We don't simply remember, we build. We don't repeat, we ascend. So may we be inspired to accept the Torah this Shavuos with all of our heart, to commit to a life of Torah truth, and to endlessly pursue higher and deeper perceptions of the physical world as an expression of a spiritual reality.